And now I am pleased to introduce our presenter for today. Dr. Amanda W. Myers is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She holds a doctorate in family sciences from the University of Kentucky and practices therapy at Insight's Murfreesboro office and through telehealth. Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today, and I will pass the mic off to you.
All right, well, thank you. As many of you all know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Abby reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in giving a talk. And so I said, sure. And we discussed several things that we could possibly present, or that I could possibly present. And really, this presentation was inspired by the work that I'm doing with my clients right now. Just some are really having a hard time coming to therapy, making changes, feeling better, and then they leave the therapy office and they're back in the same environment that honestly brought them to therapy. So there's this struggle, there's this wrestle of being able to make changes with yourself and struggling to make sense of that in the context of your family when you start to see things in a new light, with a new lens, which therapy often offers that to us. So this talk is inspired by the work that I have been doing with my clients really this last year, especially since the start of the year. So today's talk is accepting the things I cannot change, including my family. And for those who are calling in, I actually have a picture of a car driving. It looks like an SUV driving on the interstate right next to another oversized truck with a big bale of hay on it. You know, sometimes we have to accept that the road looks the way it does, and there's not anything we can do to change it, but we can adopt some acceptance to it to make it a little easier, perhaps, or a little more palatable. So Abby, if you'll go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So the next picture that I have for you all is 4 generations. You see a great-grandfather, a grandfather holding the grandson, and then the son. And the caption next to it says, "Family, where life begins and love never ends." Now, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, I know that that statement is a true statement for many people, that life begins with their family and love never ends within it. And it's a good, safe haven for other people who that's not their experience. Their family may have been the place at which their life began, but love could have been hard or complicated or traumatic or absent. And so I launched this talk knowing that there are some family situations that really are unacceptable. There are some family situations that really are exceptional, and they give us a reason to go on and to be well. So I do want to launch this talk knowing that not everybody comes from a healthy, thriving, loving family system, but we are all in relationship with one another. That's how we were created. We were created for connecting. And so for some of us, family can be with our blood relatives, and for others, family is more of our community and who God invites into our lives and our circles. Or as some of the kids say these days, our tribe. Sometimes our tribe can be our family as well. So let's go to the next slide, Abby. So I'm going to start with just some basics with family systems theory. As Abby said, I have a doctorate in family sciences, and family systems theory is one of those things that is just the bedrock of our discipline. So it talks a lot about how we function, how we, the family, functions. There's oftentimes the example of a car. and how it's made up of many parts, and how if one little piece in that car goes out, it can impact the whole entire system. There's also the idea of a thermostat in our house. We set it at, let's say, 70 degrees, and that thermostat does whatever it can to maintain that 70 degrees, that homeostasis. Well, that is often what we find in families, that whatever is normal, whatever is that 70 degrees for a family, no matter what, that system and the parts within it are going to try to maintain that homeostasis, that level of normal for them. Another piece of family systems theory is also around relationship dynamics, because systems are often dynamic. They're complex, and they're working together, and they are calculating and anticipating for other inputs into the system, and how that's going to get taken in, and how those feedback loops are going to work, and how it's going to have an output. In families, we also have emotional history, and so that plays a role in those dynamics and how we function. And then there's also order and hierarchy, just like that picture that I showed you of those 4 generations. There's order and hierarchy based on age, based on personality, based on, who's the leader, who's in charge. And so, or sometimes in families, who's the loudest. So there's those are all related ideas around family systems theory. And as I said, homeostasis, just trying to maintain what's normal for your family. Now, when I talk about family systems theories, I often in my head consider, because I come from a multi-generational family, I'm one of 12 cousins that we all grew up together. My mom is one of 5 siblings. And so when I think of family, I automatically launch into, grandparents, parents, and kids, and I'm in the kids level, although I have my own family of procreation as well. So we have a very vibrant 4 generations going on. We were all together for Easter this year. And so when I think of family systems theory, that's automatically what I go to. But I realize that's not the case for everybody. So there's your family of origin, the family that launched you, your home. So that's your family of origin. And then you have your family of procreation. That's what you got started. So like me and my husband and my daughter, that's my family of procreation. My family of origin is me and my 2 brothers and my mom and dad. So within these systems, or these generations, sometimes the system is open or closed. All right. So sometimes people are welcome to come join in, and other times it's a very closed system, like everyone's an outsider. Who are these other people? Some people talk about their outlaws instead of their in-laws. So that would seem like a really closed system. Some other terms, just to give these to you, are that you'll find in families. Like I said, I'm actually the oldest of 3. I have 2 younger brothers. And so there are times when that sibling unit was really strong. We triangulated with each other, kind of maybe against our parents. There were times where I felt really triangulated with my dad and my mom, thinking like, what is going on with these boys? Like, we gotta do something here. But triangulation that's just what it is. It's a triangle. It's an alliance. It's loyalty. It's also enmeshment. Sometimes we're too close. Another type of relationship dynamic in families are emotional cutoff, and that is a lot of times what I see in my office when we're trying to accept the things we cannot change, including our families. And sometimes it's the emotional cutoff piece that people struggle with the most. Why did my mom just cut me off? Why did my dad leave? Like, what was it about me? And why did my parents fight with their siblings? And what is all this? How did this all happen? So the emotional cutoff piece in the family is the thing that I often see the most in my practice. There's definitely some enmeshment, especially when it comes to parent-child relationships. I see that with some of the teenagers that I work with, especially the ones that are, have some things that are really high at stake, and their moms especially are like, well, we got to get this done, and we got to get you to graduation, and we got to get you this type of schooling and this type of job. And sometimes that enmeshment means, your success as a child, your parent thinks is a complete reflection on them. So there's really not a chance to individuate or differentiate between, parent and child. And so that's when things get really enmeshed and tangled and taking things personally. And so coming to therapy is a chance to take a look at those things, those family dynamics. And then lastly, and this has a lot to do with addiction, there is intergenerational transmission of risk. So I told you, I've got my grandparents, my parents, me and my siblings and my cousins, and then, our families of procreation. So we've got 4 generations that I access pretty quickly. And I realized that there are things on both sides of my family, on my mom's side and my dad's side, that I am more prone to. I've heard it said that our genetics load the gun and our behaviors pull the trigger. So you could take it that way, like we are genetically loaded. We are genetically predisposed to do certain things. So alcoholism is one of those. If we've got alcoholism on either side of your family, you want to be really careful of that. That if you've got breast cancer on either side of your family, if you've got some severe mental health issues, so if there's divorce, if there's some types of illnesses, some types of violence. It's one of those things that nature versus nurture. Sometimes it's because you've been exposed to it. Sometimes it's in your DNA. There's this whole line of behavioral genetics that has really gained some momentum that I find completely fascinating. For example, I have a cousin that when he points, he points like this. Most people, they point like that, and he just uses his whole finger and points like that. And the only other person I've ever known that points like that is my grandfather. And my cousin doesn't do that because he was raised by my grandfather or because he saw him do it a few times. It's in his DNA. That is behavioral genetics right there. So with the good things in the generations before us and the bad things, there is this intergenerational transmission of risk. So you think of going down the family line. These are some things that I'm at risk for. And that's another piece that is really helpful to be aware of, as what are you at risk for? So let's go to the next slide, Abby. All right. So I have the Serenity Prayer put up there here for those who are calling in. And it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So there are times where I apply this prayer where I'll say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, my DNA, my family, I cannot change them. Give me courage to change the things I can, my behaviors, the level of peace that I have in my heart, and give me wisdom to know the difference between where I need to just accept something as it is versus where I need to have the courage to change it. I also looked up the definition of serenity, and it's the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. And I really laughed when I read that because I thought, man, even in a family that is functioning at a well level, if we'll just call it that, just a family that functions well, has loving connections, gives room for people to be themselves, but also has some structure around it as well. Even the best, quote unquote, the best family, the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled, man, that's a tall order. And like I said, I kind of laughed thinking about that, because I'm like, you're in a family. How can you be calm, peaceful, and untroubled? There's multiple people, multiple agendas and personalities and histories and things that people bring to the table. But it's a great thing to keep in mind, that serenity is the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. And it is something that God gives us. He is the one that gives it to us, so that we can accept the things we cannot change. We can have courage to change the things we can. And we know that we can have the wisdom to know the difference between what we need to accept versus what we need to change. All right, slide. So change, I looked up some more definitions here. So as a verb, change is to make someone or something different, to alter or modify. Okay. As a noun, it's the act or instance of making or becoming different. Right? So individual change is often, it's either initiated or imposed. Have y'all noticed that? Like, you go to the doctor, you initiate, I need to get a checkup and do some labs and see my blood work, or I've got this pain, like what's going on? And so you've initiated that. And I need some health care here. I need some care. And then you find out the results. Well, you've got high blood pressure, or you're pre-diabetic, or you probably have sleep apnea, need to go get the sleep study and possibly have a CPAP machine. And so hearing that news, the change is, it can be imposed. Okay. Like, we got to get you you got to do some more physical activity, eat less red meat, have a more balanced diet. We got to get your blood pressure down, or else you're going to have to go on blood pressure meds. So sometimes a change can be initiated by the person. Sometimes it's imposed. Sometimes it is natural, and other times it's forced. There are people who, again, come to my office who are really struggling because they want to be healthy. They want to change. They don't want to be so triggered or unglued, or just highly hypervigilant, okay? Or maybe so angry. So they come to therapy, they initiate it. They're like, I've got to make a change. Other people say, my spouse told me I had to come, or else they were going to leave. So that change was kind of imposed, or it was forced. So there's individual change, and then there's familial change. So we can take it, easily and think about membership changes to the family, the size of the family. Then there's trauma. Trauma changes families. Then there's natural disasters, cancer, things we didn't plan for, things that are catastrophic, things that are deeply troubling, that just are really turning points for us. They just change the whole trajectory of our lives and our families as well. So there are some other things I just have listed out, bulleted things that bring about change: birth, death, divorce, disability, graduation, marriage, relocation, sobriety, transformation, therapy. These are all some things that can bring about change for you on a personal level, but also on a familial level as well. All right, let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about ourselves. Okay, let's get personal for a minute. How will my change impact my family? Now, another hat I wear is that I am the support group leader at the hospital here in Rutherford County, St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital. And I lead support groups for people who have weight loss surgery, bariatric surgery. And so many times they say, how will my surgery impact my family? Which is a fantastic question. But I encourage them to take it a step back and think, how does my obesity impact my family? And so it's getting to the right question, but a lot of times people want to think outwardly first. How is me giving up alcohol going to impact my family and how we socialize? How is giving up sugar? How is going for weight loss surgery? How will my move impact my family? So that plays a role in it. How will my acceptance of my family impact everyone? How will my resistance? How will my courage to change? How, you see, it's all interrelated. So I think it's good for us to kind of take a step back and just think about, again, that word change, to alter something, to do something different. Change inherently is neutral. Okay, it's neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. It's just change, making something different, altering something. Yet it may be well received by our families, or it may be highly resisted, highly protested, maybe even sabotaged, especially when it comes to addiction. Whether it's addiction to alcohol or addiction to food or addiction to shopping or gambling, if you have a family member who's your buddy around any of those habits, when you make that change, it changes things. Change begets change. So when you're no longer the drinking buddy to one of your cousins or one of your siblings, when you're no longer the food buddy for your spouse, or you're not that parent who is, constantly giving your kids access to junk and quote unquote celebrating with food, when you make that change, it can create more change, but it can also expose problems. Why is it that I have to drink when I'm around my family? Why is it that it's so problematic that I'm not drinking right now? It's problematic a little bit to myself because I'm not getting to numb out. I'm not getting to focus on just having a good time. It's giving me a chance to see things as they really are. So God talks about giving us, a new vision. And sometimes when we make changes, we commit to making a change, it gives us a new vision for how things really are. So the wonderful thing about family systems theory that I appreciate so much is that a change in one person is a change to the whole system. So you think about that car and how it moves, and changing one little piece to it can change the whole system. Now, if change is just neutral, we know it's just neutral. It's not positive or negative, but we are not cars. We are complex, dynamic people created in God's image, created for connection. And so if I decide to make a change for the better, it can impact my whole family. If I decide to make a change for the worse, it can impact my whole family. So I really want to encourage you all to consider that it's changing you, how changing me impacts we. And it's not your job to get your family on board with the changes that you're making. It is your job to honor God with your body, with your words, with your actions. And that's your job. It's not your job to try to corral the rest of the family, whatever family may mean to you. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to show you two slides, and the first one is about regulating. What regulates families? Okay, and I have a picture of a little centerpiece on a table, how that's set up. So religion regulates families. Rules are regulators. Rituals, relationships, rites of passage. These are all things that regulate the system, that regulate the family. So religion it really can organize a family, especially if you all practice the same religion. But then what happens when someone says, this isn't working for me? or I want to make my own choice. So again, religion can help to organize some families. It can be a really strong connector. Rules are another thing. So nothing exposes rules in a family more than the dinner table, is what I have found. The rules of how you come to the table, how you sit, if you say if there's a family prayer or not, if phones are allowed at the table, if people even come to a table. Sometimes family meals aren't there. So rules are something that I love to take a look at just from the dinner table perspective. And with those rules or traditions or nuances in a family, sometimes those rules can launch into a ritual. So, for example, like a bedtime routine, the way your parents put you to sleep or not. But let's just say they did. There was a whole routine around that, and it could start to feel a bit sacred. Or if that ritual didn't get done, it feels like a loss. It feels like something's off. So, at 8:00, that's when we wrap up what we're doing, whether it's playing a game together or watching a show together. But 8:00, we all go upstairs and we brush our teeth, we get in our pajamas, we say a prayer, we sing a song, maybe we read a book, and then the lights are out and the house is still, and we're all doing this together. And so that routine can really become a sacred ritual. Okay. And other things that regulate families, again, are relationships. So those dynamics, whether there's enmeshment or emotional cutoff, or there's just a nice ebb and flow, there's give and take, there is room for everyone at the table, there's a pause, we need to make sure everyone's okay. So relationships can help regulate those families and regulate change. And then there's rites of passage. So like I said, I'm one of 12 cousins, and one of my uncles had a restaurant here in Murfreesboro for years. And almost all of the cousins worked in his restaurant at one point or another. And then I remember saying to one of my younger cousins who was starting, I was like, "Oh, I'm so happy for you. You're here. And this is just a rite of passage." And she was like, "What's that?" So sometimes these things that come into our families or a part of the family, they mean more to others than the other people. But sometimes families have certain rites of passages. Some are based on religion, some are based on age. But it's interesting to me how each person internalizes them and makes meaning out of them. All right, let's go to the next one. So these are regulators, and then there's resistance. Okay. So these are just blocks, complete blocks. I'm resisting how my family is. I want to revolt. I'm not okay with the alcoholism. I'm not okay with the yelling. I'm not okay with not talking about things that matter. I'm not okay with things just staying stagnant and as they are. So sometimes you have people in the family that resist these family dynamics, these traditions, these generations, and they say, I'm not going to repeat this. I'm not bringing this into the next generation. So they may revolt. They may say enough is enough. I'm not, I didn't have a choice when I was younger, but I have a choice now. They could rebel. They could say, your view of God is not matching mine. I don't want any piece of that. And so, there are many families that ache for their prodigal son or daughter, to come back to the flock, come back, but they let him go. Then there's another way to resist is to redirect. So sometimes families, rather than looking at a problem or something that needs to change, they just kind of redirect it. We'll just focus on something else. Okay. And then there's other family members that bring to the table, like, we need to refocus. Like, things are off. Things aren't as good as they could be. You know, if we made this little change here, it could just make such a big difference. And then there's other family members who reveal. They reveal, they say, enough is enough. I'm not living like this. I'm not living with family trauma. I'm not living with holding on to these secrets, because, you know, our bodies keep the score. And so, you know, there were some families that you can think of that you grew up with that you thought had it all together, and then one family member just reveals it and exposes it and says, we're not okay. And this is not okay. These things that keep happening are we're not doing this. I'm not doing this anymore. So again, in families, when it comes to change, you have some change that is just regulated and natural within the family, and other change that is just actively resisted. All right, so let's go to the next slide. That brings us back to acceptance. So God, help me accept the things that I cannot change. Okay, acceptance is something that we receive, but it's also something that we give. In some families, there is a wide range of acceptance for personal choice. In other families, there's not so much. There's acceptance isn't a value. So I say, again, going back to my dinner table example, that at the table, you can really see whether this is a family that accepts each individual and values them and wants the best for them, or if it's a family that kind of dictates and says, this is who we are and this is what we do. So at the dinner table, you can see acceptance or lack thereof. Again, just a real simple example. At the table, we experience our taste. You know, what our family does around food, it really sets the stage for us in the present and in the future. So our taste buds are influenced by our family. Our manners are influenced by our family, table manners. Our communication or lack thereof, it is all experienced at that table or not. What if so that's all surface level, but if we were to look underneath, you know, have that lens of acceptance at the family table, we realize that at the family table, our view of self and others is shaped. Okay, our view of self and others, it gets shaped at that table, whether we're accepted or we're rejected, whether we're told this is who you are or who do you think you are. So those ideas around identity, they get shaped at the table. And then expectations for life are often discussed with our family, like, no, you're going to a good school, or no, you can't have that career because no one in the family has done that before, and I don't think that would be a good idea. Or what, you want to pursue film as a career, you want to be a gamer, like, how does that work? So you can see where those expectations for life, for productivity, citizenship, all those things, they can be accepted or rejected at the table. And then values are also transmitted. So that is something else that we see going on at family tables. And again, and if you're not having that family time at the table, there's other ways that this can happen, but that's one of the most concrete ways for me to think of that we all can connect around, whether we sat at the table together or not. So let's go to the next slide. So again, I'm extending the table example, okay? So, Grandpa a lot of times raised us or sat at the table and his focus was what was on our plates. And he wanted you to clean your plate, okay? And we ate all the carbs and had second helpings, and, you clean your plate and then you get dessert. I remember my grandfather saying, y'all could probably think of some funny things your grandparents said to you as well, clean your plate, it'll put hair on your chest, back when guys wanted hair on their chest, or, drink all your milk, it'll give you strong bones. So there was just this mentality around what the being at the table was for. And, it's just get the job done, clean your plate. But sometimes those methods around that message brought some guilt and shame. Cleaning your plate was you clean your plate because you don't want to be wasteful. And so for some of us, especially those that deal with food addiction, or they're volume eaters or binge eaters, that focus of just cleaning your plate and not really feeling your sensations of fullness and taking it slow really disabled you in a lot of ways, and predisposed you again to ignore your body cues, because the focus was, grandpa said I had to clean my plate. And so if we were to take a step back, what values were communicated? It was really your performance is what matters the most here. Cleaning your plate, that's the bottom line. Not how are you feeling? Is this okay in your mouth? Not that gets asked, but I've also worked with a lot of children who have sensory issues or on the autism spectrum, and they don't have the same skill set at the table that everybody else does, because what's going on for them is very different internally. Sight, smells, sounds, lots of stuff is going on at the table. And I'm not saying that is a reason to exclude someone if the table is a place where you struggle, but to be more understanding and more accepting that not everyone who comes to the table is coming from the same place. And so again, when the focus was on just cleaning your plate, what was communicated is, your behavior is what matters most, your productivity, your final product. Okay, so we're going to contrast grandpa's clean your plate mentality with another mentality. Abby, if you'll go to the next slide. So granddaughter, okay, she might be a little spitfire, and she might say, I don't need your plate, grandpa, I need a new plate. I'm done with just food being the focus, us not talking. I want nourishment. Nourishment is the goal of my eating as well as sobriety. Okay. And I'd rather eat clean than clean a plate. I want to be so connected, my mind and body to be so connected, and I've got to do it slowly and with food that heals me rather than harms me. Okay. So granddaughter really is doing something noticeably different. Okay. Maybe rejecting these past traditions or these instructions to clean your plate. And so for granddaughter, the focus is on family rather than food. It's on these relationships at the table. It's on thoughtfulness. It could be on portion control, especially if you have a family history of obesity. It can be on calm. Remember that serenity. It can be on health. And so something as maybe this seems like pretty benign, thinking about the dinner table, it's actually something that is a very big deal for so many of us. There are links between mental health and nutrition. There's links between nutrition and disease and cancer and premature death and quality of life and quantity of life and addiction as well. And so again, you can see where that change could create, like, who does she think she is? Or she's not obeying what I say. But how that could create a little bit of resistance in the family, and exposure as well, of we're not just going to keep doing the same thing just because we've always done it. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right. So I think about change. God, help me accept the things I cannot change, like my family, change the things I can, my behaviors, my thought life, my internalization of the things that have happened to me or around me, and give me courage to change the things I can. So I have a picture here of someone crossing the finish line, a marathon, really. And I think about how some people who've never run before decide at a certain age, like, it's time. I want to do this big thing. Maybe they've just run those 5K races, and so they may do it in honor of someone in their family, or they may do it for a personal accomplishment. But you running a marathon can have an impact on the rest of your family. You have to have that, just that tunnel vision, that complete focus, that training, that preparation. And if you've never done that before, you can see where that would really be different, different for your family, whether it's your family of origin or your family of procreation. And so sometimes us setting goals can inspire other people in our family, or it could create some maybe ill feelings, like, who do they think they are? So I've seen that a lot of times with first generation college students. So I had graduation as one of those things that can create change in a family. So those first generation college students, they leave home, they go to the college campus, and they don't quite feel like they fit in. They don't come with the same kind of experience from having been modeled by a family member of what going to college looks like. And so they don't have as many models or support, maybe. So it could be that the family is pushing you out and saying, don't be like us, go to college, like, get your degree. And so you don't quite fit in on your college campus. And then you go back home and you find you don't quite fit in there either. You start to realize, man, this isn't how the world works, or everyone here is so naive, or, man, I don't fit in anymore. I've learned more. I may sound a little bit different. I may be talking a little bit differently, thinking a little bit differently. And it can sometimes be translated into, oh, you think you're better than us now because you're a big college student. Think you're better than us. And so it really creates this conflict or confusion of, do I leave home to, quote unquote, become a better person? Or do I just say, enough, I can't handle being in this kind of environment. I know home. I just want to be like everybody else. And so again, that graduation, it could be something that inspires, the generations below you, or it could be something that the generations above you just think, like, oh, you think you're smarter than me now, you think you're better than me. They may see it as a threat. So that's the word I was searching for, is that sometimes our change feels threatening to other people. That's just how they internalize it. That's how they process it. So another picture that I have for you is, I tell people often, my weight loss surgery patients, to eat the rainbow. And it amazes me how many families don't eat at the table, how many do not eat fresh fruits and vegetables, how many don't even know what I mean when I say eat the rainbow. Their foods are all highly processed, lots of flour, lots of sugar, all kind of the same color. And so going for something different, something that was not, you didn't experience growing up on your taste buds, can feel like you're being disloyal to your family. So it cracks me up. I eat avocado all the time now. I never once was given avocado in my family of origin. And I actually had my folks over last night, and me and my husband and my daughter, we've got avocado on our salad, and asked my parents if they want some, and they're like, ugh, no. And if I wasn't in a good headspace, I could go to the point of like, oh, they don't accept me, or they don't think what I'm doing is right. Okay. Because families can kind of create some of that emotional charge for us. But I was in a good headspace and just realized, they've never had avocado before. They're not saying I'm gross. They're just that's just not something that is in their repertoire. So again, sometimes when we make these changes, it can come across as disloyal to the family. Like, why are you doing that? We've never done that before. We've never had this at our table. So accepting that other people are not going to accept your change is part of the process for us as well. So I think about the scripture in Proverbs 14:30 that says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And sometimes our family can be a conduit for peace. They can help us. They're our safe place, and other times they can just rile us up, and it impacts our body. If we have parents who play the comparison game between us and our siblings, that envy can get brought up as well. And so making change can expose those things. So I have a picture of a home on here as well. I think about, like, if these walls could talk, like, what would they tell us about all the heartbeats in the house and the traditions and the sacred things? And then, as I shared before, sometimes sobriety in a family is not welcomed. We all drink. What are you going to do? We all, am I not supposed to have wine at Christmas because you just got your 6-month chip from AA or Celebrate Recovery? Like, are you going to make me change too? And that, again, is a place that my clients really come with some heartache of, like, I'm doing something healthy. I am trying to change not just my life, but the trajectory of our family. Some dynamics here that it's not okay to get, to get drunk every time we're together. This isn't what it's about. And so again, some people around food, they're like, I'm done with all these get-togethers and all this food, and I'm a food addict, and I'm a binge eater, and I can't handle it. I need a break. I need a break from not just my family. It's not a break from my family, but it's a break from these things that are so normalized in our family that aren't good for me. So that's another piece, again, that I have found here recently that my clients are struggling with, is I am so trying to do what's right, to live in peace, to nourish my mind and my body, and it's being resisted so heavily. So what do we do with that? And I've got a picture of someone going on a hike, because it brings me back to serenity, that sense of calm and peacefulness and being untroubled. And that really connects with the verse, John 16:33, where Jesus says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. Our peace comes from the Lord. It comes directly from him. In this world, you will have trouble. In your families, you're going to have trouble, but take heart, be of good courage. I have overcome the world. Some of these hurtful family dynamics, Jesus says, I've overcome all of that. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. How will my acceptance impact my family? Okay. And I use acceptance as that broad term of accept the things I cannot change. Because sometimes we get married and, man, we see a lot of issues with our spouse's family, and, like, really, you guys live like this? And so how do you accept some unhealthy family dynamics or some volatile family members? How do you do that? Well, I think about the verse in Hebrews 12:14 that says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone, and be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. So when we start to think about our relationship with God, it helps us to have a better understanding of our relationship with others. My job is to honor the Lord in whatever situation he's put me in. And if I'm in a bad situation of my own creation, if there's some amends that I need to make, if there's some changes I need to make, I know that he can help me with that. So, but again, if we were to think about going for a big change like weight loss surgery, I tell people you cannot change your family, but you can change your responses and you can pursue peace. Okay. And having that in front of you, I can change my responses. Courage to change the things I can, like my responses, my reactions, and to really shift my focus to pursuing peace. You know, just like that grandfather where his agenda was just clean the plate. That's what we're here for. That's what we're doing. And then the granddaughter that said, hey, wait a minute. I want this plate to be about nourishment. I want us to connect. I want things to look differently, you know, to pursue peace in that kind of way. Another thing to keep in mind is you cannot expect a system, okay, that whole car, you cannot expect a system just to override, to stop doing what it's always done when one person makes a change. So sometimes that one change that you make, you won't see how it impacts others, or maybe if it's especially if it's a healthy change, you may not see, you know, fruit from that initially, but it's possible that you could over time. Okay. It's possible that you could have a family member that would tell you, thank you. I've been wanting this to change in our family for so long. I just didn't know how it could happen. And so, but you can't expect everyone to jump on board. It looks like what that would look like too is like religion being a great organizer of families. You know, say everybody's in this specific denomination, and one person says, this is not working for me anymore. And they may leave that denomination and go to a different one, not expecting the whole rest of the family to make that shift as well, but accepting their choice as you want them to, as you invite them to accept your own. So the other piece of this is you can decide to accept the things you cannot change about others. That's another way to pursue peace. You can accept the things you cannot change about others. And you can change the things you can about yourself. Okay. So that's another piece of this puzzle that I've tried to help with my clients to rectify, is that even if nothing else in your life changes, you can still change. You can still be clean and sober. You can still, you can refuse to be volatile or even violent in your family. You can refuse to settle for the status quo. I'm reminded of a verse in Ephesians 4, verses 31 through 32. It says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. And that's something that really just can define some families. There's bitterness, there's rage, there's anger. But God invites us to get rid of all of that, and instead to replace that with be kind and compassion to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. And being kind and compassionate in your family may be something that no one else has experienced. Their family's not a safe place. And so you're bringing the love of Christ into your family and saying, we don't have to maintain this homeostasis. We don't have to maintain how things have always been. And I'm not going to be someone who repeats bad, hurtful, harmful, abusive behavior in my family. So getting rid of that, getting rid of the bitterness, the rage and anger, the brawling and slander, along with every form of malice, and to instead be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. Sometimes acceptance looks like forgiveness. I have to forgive them. I'm not going to invite the injury back in. I'm not going to give someone a platform to continue to be hurtful. But I'm just going to accept where they're at and do my best to pursue peace where I'm at. And I'm just going to have to forgive them. I mean, Jesus forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. And so we know that we have access to Jesus to help give us that strength and that direction. So I am going to leave you all with a blessing from 2 Thessalonians 3:16. It says, "May the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way."